All right, so we are going to look at Exodus chapter 10, verses 21 through 29. Exodus chapter 10, 21 through 29. I'll give you a moment to find your way if you've got a paper Bible. People actually still use those things, huh? Yeah.
I thought I had the car this morning, but I did. And yes, I do. I prefer even like reading just regular books. I prefer to have that hardback book.
I do too, Kimberly.
Yeah, I joke because I bring my Bible too. So Sunday morning I've got it. Today I don't, but usually not on Wednesday night. But yeah, I do the same thing on Sunday morning. Yeah. Just in there by themselves. No, she's in there. All right, so Exodus chapter 10, 21 to 29 says this. And the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand towards heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, a darkness to be felt. So Moses stretched out his hand towards heaven, and there was pitch darkness in all the land of Egypt 3 days. They did not see one another, nor did anyone rise from his place for 3 days. But all the people of Israel had light where they lived. And Pharaoh called Moses and said, go serve the Lord. Your little ones also may go with you. Only let your flocks and your herds remain behind. But Moses said, you must also let us have sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. Our livestock also must go up with us. Not a hoof shall be left behind, for we must take of them to serve the Lord our God. And we do not know with what we must serve the Lord until we arrive there. The Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let them go. And Pharaoh said to him, get away from me. Take care never to see my face again. For on the day you see my face, you shall die. Moses said, as you say, I will not see your face again. All right, so is this plague mentioned beforehand? Is there an announcement to Pharaoh beforehand? Yes. Where does it say that?
Doesn't it?
Well, you tell me. Read the verse that it says it was announced beforehand. That's all right. Verse 21, right?
Okay, no, I thought that, no, I read that wrong.
Yeah. Now, I'm not sure if there's any significance to this, but I bring it up because if you've noticed, as we've gone through these different plagues, some of them are explicitly said to be announced beforehand. Go to Pharaoh. Tell him, if you don't do this, if you don't let the people go, then this is going to happen. But some of them are not. And because there's a back and forth in there, it does make me think that not all the plagues were actually announced. We've got no indication that this one was announced beforehand necessarily. Again, I'm not sure if there's any significance there, but there is a back and forth that's going on within this text. So regardless of which ones are announced and which ones aren't, does Pharaoh know who's doing it?
Yes, I was going to say, I think that's interesting that if it wasn't announced, as soon as it fell, he called Moses and said, go.
Yeah. It's not announced in the text anyway. So again, it is pointed out when it is announced. So I don't think it's announced every time, which is just kind of an interesting thing. All right. So what is this ninth plague? What happens? What's the plague? Darkness. It's not a trick question. Like, a little bit of silence. It's darkness. Richard Rogers said this. He was a teacher at Sunset. Did you know him? Yeah. Okay. All right. I forgot that your dad went to Sunset. So Richard Rogers said this. He said that night it gets dark, right? It's kind of like tonight. Go to bed, it gets dark. He said that night it got dark. In the morning, it is still dark. All day long is dark. How bad is this darkness that they go through?
Well, they couldn't even see each other.
Couldn't even see each other.
It's described as a thick darkness. I think that.
Yeah. Does that say thick?
This one says thick.
Mine said felt. I don't know if anybody else has something different or slightly different to that. What was that?
Yeah,
Pitch. Go ahead.
mine says felt also. I mean, that's deep.
Yeah. Yeah. It's when it's describing things that way, thick or felt. This is not a normal darkness. This is not a normal darkness. This is something above and beyond. And again, couldn't even see each other. They wouldn't be able to tell time. Because if it's that dark, you're not going to have what in the sky?
Sun.
Well, you're not going to have the sun, but you're not going to have stars. You're not going to know when it's day or night. There have been experiments where people have been put in rooms with no windows or anything like that, and they have artificial light, and they've messed with people's rhythms, and people don't know what time it is. And actually, people can start to go a little bit crazy. They can literally become undone because you just don't know. I don't know what time it is. I don't know what day it is. I don't know if I've been here for 3 days or 6 days. So you can imagine, yeah, it's the text tells us how long it is, right? How long is it? It's 3 days. They probably don't recognize how long it is, because after 1 day, at what point do you realize what it is? You don't. There's nothing out there to explain to you, to our senses, to say, oh, the whole day has passed. You don't know. It's not based on how you feel, because we could fall asleep in the afternoon, couldn't we? Or stay up all night, which was lucky me a couple nights ago. Not pleasant. So yeah, this is pretty bad. Not only do they not see each other, what else does it say? They didn't do something else. Yeah, they didn't even leave. They were in their homes. This is an unnatural, this is a miraculous darkness. This is not, as some liberals would say. If you read some liberal commentaries or you listen to some people who are liberal theologians or whatever talk about these plagues and stuff, they say, well, it could have been just maybe a volcano erupted ways away, and you know how that sends up plume of dust and kind of cover out the sun and all that. But we have that kind of stuff happen today. And
You would have the fallout from that.
well, you
Would
would.
this been a form of outer darkness? Kind of a touch
Outer darkness. You mean where it talks about like what'll happen?
like hell.
Like hell, yeah.
I mean,
Well,
a touch of something that horrid.
yeah. Well, you definitely could see that there might be I don't know if a parallel, or you could definitely get maybe a feeling for what it might be like in some small way. And I would say really small way of what hell is going to be like, because the Bible does talk about, outer darkness or utter darkness, those kinds of things. But I really think those are just descriptive of things that you can't explain. Like, I don't think you can explain in words what hell is going to be like. Just like I don't think we can explain in words what glory is going to be like. We get some hints, we get some pictures, that kind of stuff, but we don't fully know until we get there. So maybe there's something here to give a little clue to that, but it would be very small, regardless of how bad it was. And I think it was really, really, really bad.
I guess the closest to that would be having the lights turned off on you in Carlsbad Cavern for even a split second. It's almost.
Okay.
It's almost.
I've never been to the caverns, but I could
it's
imagine being in a cave and somebody turns the lights out.
Yeah.
Have you ever been?
bad.
Okay. Yeah. If you've ever been somewhere where it's been so dark that you can put your hand up in front of your face and just can't see it. Sometimes it might be in your house. You turn the light out real quick and your eyes haven't adjusted yet. And so you can't actually see anything. Of course, our eyes adjust and then we can see things. This would have been like that for 3 days. You wouldn't have gotten much your eyes would not have adjusted to that. Now, how did God do it? The text doesn't tell us. You can speculate all you want, but this is a miraculous event. This is not a volcano. This is not a storm that comes in and is cloudy for 3 days. No, this is something horrible. And I think the point that Mike maybe is trying to draw out is this would be a case of dread. At what point would you not be dreading this? This would be horrific. So it's real bad. Now, what would you be thinking if you woke up and the day was dark and it stayed dark for 3 days? What would you be thinking? Hate the dark? So you wouldn't be feeling too good about that. Yeah, it'd be pretty horrible. So how did these people feel? You can kind of maybe think about putting yourself in there. It would be depressing.
Was there a God for this, James? That you usually mention a God?
Yes, we're going to talk about that. We will talk about that in a moment. Yes, there is a God, right? Every one of these plagues is an attack against one of the gods. We'll get there. We'll get there. All right. So do the Israelites have light in Goshen?
Yes.
So it's definitely miraculous. Again, Richard Rogers, I love reading his thoughts. He talked about you could be walking in Egypt, not that anybody was. Nobody left their house. But you could be walking in Egypt, pitch black, step foot in Goshen, and the lights are on. This is that miraculous kind of thing. So again, what is God doing with this?
He's setting his people apart.
Yeah, he's continuing to set his people apart, continuing to show them, and the Egyptians, who's the boss and who it is. So let me ask the question. Mike kind of preempted it, but does anybody know which Egyptian? It is an attack against the god. Which Egyptian god is being attacked?
Was it Ray?
Yes, ding, ding, ding. You get the gold cookie, or I don't know. I don't know if you want a gold cookie, but you get a gold star. You get a okay, get a chocolate chip cookie. I don't know, whatever kind of cookie you want, you get it. Yeah, it's the sun god Ray. Sometimes we think about it, people pronounce it as Ra. It was not pronounced as Ra, it was pronounced as Ray. But the sun god, you can see there, has got an eagle head or an eagle body, depending. And he's got this disc over his head. It's the sun. Yeah, it's a disc. So the 9th plague is against this sun god Ray. He's often pictured again with a hawk, as a hawk, or with the head of a hawk in a human body with that solar disk above his head. One article said this about Ray. It said Ray is one of the oldest deities in the Egyptian pantheon. Ray is the Egyptian word for sun. It's the same thing. As a solar deity, you can see where this is going, right? As a solar deity, Ray embodied the power of the sun, but was also thought to be the sun itself. Envisioned as a great god riding on a barge across the heavens. Now you could understand that, right? Where does the sun go? Across the heavens. So they pictured Ray in a boat floating across the sky. So the sun is literally this god. So he's riding across the heavens through the day, and then he would descend into the underworld at sunset. Now, this is all mythology, right? Okay, it's not real stuff, but this is what they believed. He would go into the underworld, and as he made his way through the darkness beneath the earth, he was attacked nightly. Every single night he was attacked by a giant serpent who tried to prevent the sun from rising and so destroy life on the earth. According to scholar Richard W. Wilkinson, Ray is arguably Egypt's most important deity, not because of his association with the life-giving, not only because of his association with the life-giving sun, but also through the influence that developed later on with the other gods. So the point that this scholar was trying to make is Ray is the most important god in the Egyptian pantheon. And so darkness is a direct attack against this god. Guess what? In their mythology, they thought this god is fighting against a serpent, but that's fighting to come out the other end. And guess what? Every day this God came back. He was more powerful than anything in the underworld, the serpent or whatnot. But he is not powerful against Yahweh, the one true God. So you can see that this is a direct attack, right? It's not just one day. This is 3 days in a row now. This is a long period of time. Your most powerful, most influential, most important God, the one that gives you crops and all of this kind of stuff, gives you the heat and light and all that, is weak, can't do anything. And in fact, the slave God, the God of the slaves, gives their people light even when Ray is snuffed out. This is a big deal. Sometimes, again, we just think about maybe the effect, the physical effect of these plagues, but there is a psychological and a religious effect that each one of these plagues is having on the Egyptians, on the Israelites as well, but on the Egyptians. This is bigger than a lot of times we think about. This is destroying not only their physical livelihood, this is shaking up their emotions. This is shaking up their religion. These are the gods we worship. These are the gods we put our trust in. These are the gods we hope in. We think are going to do wonderful things for us, and they let us down each and every time. Another one bites the dust. Another one is going down. Another one is being destroyed. So it's an attack against that God, unable to stand against the one true God.
Well, it doesn't say anything, but that would have to affect the temperature as well, because there's no, unless God
Sure.
miraculously kept the temperature up.
No, you're right. And that may or may not be the case. I mean, it clearly is not so bad. Like if we literally stopped rotating, right? If the earth stopped rotating and God wasn't involved, then we would freeze on one side and we'd burn on the other side of the planet. So it's not quite like that, but you're right. God may certainly have allowed the temperature to drop at least as much as it would drop at night. And if you know anything about the desert and even in Egypt and stuff like that, a lot of times it gets really cold at night in the deserts, places like that. So you could see the temperature plummet. Very good point. Doesn't say necessarily, but we can kind of infer that it would at least have been as cold as your normal night going through the whole day. So it's pretty bad. When Pharaoh finally calls Moses in, what does he say to him?
No.
I never want to see you again.
Well, the first thing he says, that's definitely at the end, but the first thing he says is, you can go, right? You can go. He says, you guys can go worship Yahweh, you can go do your thing, but what? Don't take the flocks or the herds. All right, so what is Pharaoh trying to do with that? He says, I don't want you to take your animals. You can go, and he even says you can take your little ones. What was the last plague all about, and what was the compromise? Do you remember last week? Pharaoh said, you can go, but just the men. Now he says, okay, you can even take your little ones, right? But you can't take the flock. So what's Pharaoh trying to do in all of this?
No, I think that he's trying to hold something to make sure they'll come back.
I think you're both right. He's trying to hold on to control, and he's trying to compromise. I'll let you go, but this. And part of the compromise is to keep control. I want to still have control. If I've got all your livelihood, all your animals, you are going to die if you go for too long, right? So Pharaoh is, even after all of this, Pharaoh is still trying to hold on. His power is in jeopardy, and he wants to hold on to control. That's what this is all about. These compromises, he's trying to hold on to some form of control, some form of power, even though, is he in control? He is clearly not in control. He's not in control of anything.
And I think he knows that.
He seems to have moments of clarity, doesn't he? And then not.
But I think that his people know that he doesn't.
Well, I think you're right. Now, is Pharaoh, when Moses refuses that compromise, when he refuses that demand of Pharaoh, what does Pharaoh now say?
Don't show your face again.
Don't show your face is what Paul brought up, right? Don't show your face again. Get out of here, get away. And what happens the next time I see you? You are going to die. I'll kill you the next time. The next time you come into my presence, you're a dead man. Now, did a king in the ancient world have that power? Sure. Does Pharaoh have that power at this point? Probably not, right? Just because God is doing what he's doing, right? He is not in control. But that was a legitimate threat. That was a legitimate thing for kings in the ancient world. So Pharaoh is saying, but I don't know if you get the same feeling I do. Reading this, I kind of feel like Pharaoh is at the end of his ropes, don't you? Where he's finally just threatening that last thing, like, I don't ever want to see you again. You ever been there? At the end of your ropes? Never want to see you again. You're out of my life, whatever. You're dead to me. I hate you. But that's kind of what Pharaoh is kind of going through here. He's like, I don't want you to come back. And if you do, I will literally kill you. Go ahead.
Kind of stretch into the next part, but this time it appears that he does not change his mind either.
Yeah.
But yet God still brings another plague.
Remember, God's hardening his heart. It says he's hardening his heart at this point. We kind of touched on that, right? There's an interplay of free will as well as God's will. And at least in these later plagues, where it specifically says God hardened Pharaoh's heart, because early on it says Pharaoh hardened his own heart. Over and over again, it'll say Pharaoh hardened his heart. Here, we're starting to see God hardening Pharaoh's heart. And however he's doing it, at least one of the things that potentially could be going on is Pharaoh had gone so far off the cliff. Remember we talked about the illustration? If you drive off a cliff, and when the wheels are over the edge of the cliff, you decide, I think I'm going to put the car in reverse. It's probably too late, right? I mean, you're over the cliff. You can't, there is a point of no return.
But it seems like, to me,
Yeah, go ahead.
that God had accomplished, I mean, the mission has been accomplished. He
Yes.
said go, he's not taking that back, it's go. But instead of going,
Well,
God wants to strike one more time.
are you saying that when he says get out of my sight, he's giving him permission to take his flocks too?
Yes.
No.
Okay, I thought he.
No.
Okay, all right. So I
No.
misunderstood that.
Yes, no. What Pharaoh is saying, get out of my sight. He's not saying you can go with your flocks. No, he gave him the compromise. Moses refused. He's angry.
So
You're
he
not.
has
Gonna...
changed his, I mean, so he's not, okay, all right.
No.
So misunderstood that.
Yeah, miscommunication there. No, he is not saying, okay, guys, I decide to let you go. Go ahead, take your flocks and everything too. No, he's angry. He just says, get out of my sight. I never want to see you again. But it's not leave Egypt.
Okay, all right.
It's not that. Yeah, sorry. So he understands Pharaoh's angry. The reason he's angry is because he's losing control. As was already mentioned, his people know it. His people were probably complaining, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you complain to the ruler? And you know that there's whispers and discussions because the proclamation is going out to even the Egyptians. Remember the one with the cattle and the livestock and the servants? If you bring them in, they won't be destroyed by the hail. There were some Egyptians who listened, some who didn't, but some who did. And so there's a distinction made there as well. So you know his people are complaining, grumbling. Some of his servants probably doing more. And you can see it in the text. You can kind of see his servants are saying, just let these people go. Remember in the last one that we're ruined. Why don't you just let them go? And we talked last time about being stubborn and just not willing, even when you know you're wrong. Sometimes even when we know we're doing harm to ourselves and others, we just don't want to be shown to be wrong. We'll hold on regardless. I don't care. I know I'm wrong. Everybody else might even know I'm wrong. I'm not going to admit it. It reminds me of, I knew a guy years ago, slightly different, but he was a habitual liar. You never knew if he was telling the truth. And some of the things were just so outrageous that everybody knew he was lying. Like, you'd be like, oh, one day I want to go skydiving. He's, oh, yeah, I'm a master skydive instructor. Really? I've known you all my life. That's the first I've ever heard you say, oh, yeah, yeah. And they'd be like, well, I'd love to do scuba dive. I'm a master scuba instructor. Like, just weird kind of crazy stuff. If you said you went to space, he'd be like, I went there too. I invented the rocket. It's just weird, outlandish kind of stuff. But he stuck to his guns. You could catch him. I remember one time he was caught in a lie. It was in his face. He had taken something. He was a thief as well, right? Here is the proof. You took it. We've got it. Here it is. Just admit it. I never took it. Never touched it. Wasn't me. Here's Pharaoh, right? Unwilling to, he's not lying about things. He's just unwilling to bend. He's always going to be just that stubborn kind of guy. All right. So here's the homework question for this week. Are we ever tempted to try and seek some kind of compromise with God? Because we see Pharaoh trying to compromise with God through Moses a number of times, just over and over again. And do we ever think about it this week, do we ever try to compromise with God? And if we do, what might be a solution to that? Or how might that work out? Is God willing to compromise with us on things? What is it that we try to compromise with God? God, I'll give you Sunday morning, but the rest of the week is mine. I'll do with it as some people could do that kind of thing. So think about that this week. Are we ever tempted to try to compromise with God? God says in his word, I want you to live this way. We think, well, I'll do 50%, or maybe 51%. Be pretty good.
I think sometimes, this may not be the same thing. It could be, I guess, but I think we bargain with God.
Sure. Compromise, bargaining. That's what Pharaoh's doing. Sure.
Was it Hannah? Was it Hannah?
Who said, if you give me,
maybe I'll give him after
yes.
the time that, yeah. And I think we do. Maybe not out loud, but I think I do. I have.
Yeah. When you think more of bargaining, I'm thinking compromise, but I could see how you would add bargaining in there. A lot of times when I think about the word bargaining, I often think about somebody who's in a life or death situation. Maybe they got a bad doctor's, report or something. They got something that could be fatal, right? And they say, if you cry out to God, if you heal me of this, then I'll serve you the rest of my life, that kind of thing. So I kind of think of that in the terms maybe of bargaining or something. But we as Christians, do we ever try to compromise with the word of God? Like, okay, I'll do this much for you, Lord, but I might not fully be committed to you in this way or that way. Or so it might just something to think about with this concept of compromise. All right. Anybody else got any thoughts, questions, anything like that?